evening, everybody. Thank you for attending the budget workshop. Tonight is our second workshop of the season. This is the General Services Department in the Department of Public Works. So it focuses on what was historically known as the Highway Department, the Sanitation Department, and the Recreation Department. Those departments have been combined, but we do have 3 working supervisors in those departments, and they will basically be working on and talking about the things that are their expertise when it comes to these. Again, these budget workshops are designed to inform the public of what the needs are of each department. It gives the department heads or department managers an opportunity to explain what they need for expenses to run their departments and to function those departments properly based on the tasks that they've been assigned. They communicate that to the council. The council then provides feedback to the general manager and the director of finance, who basically put together the final budget for preparation and consideration to the council. So tonight we do have 3 departments that we'll be looking at, and we're going to start with the highway department and highway operations. And the supervisor that handles highway operations is Mark Cady, who's here today. At the last budget workshop, it was water and sewer, and what we really did was we kind of went through any major changes in line items. But of course, as we go through, if there's any questions on a particular line item, feel free to shout it out. I don't think in this particular budget that we see very much change. We've been pretty solid with budgeting of the highway department. And then, of course, at the end of going through the line items, I'm sure each one of the department heads has some other larger requests that are outside of the budget, whether it be equipment or staffing or something along those lines. So, as we begin, highway administration is known as A5010. Within there is the supervisor salary, clothing allowance, and overtime, equipment purchases, and then miscellaneous supplies and things to that nature. No change really in there. What you will see with the CSEA union, which each of these folks are a member of, and in here is a 1.5% increase in salary across the board contractually for them. So you'll see no changes there. 5110 brings us into the highway maintenance. And so the salaries for each of the laborers within that section, again, no change there other than the 1.5% increase. Clothing allowance stays the same, that's contractual. And the same on the overtime there. Moving into the expenses, these are the things that have a little bit more leeway on. The 4012 account in there is gasoline, gas and fuel. You'll see in 2018, if you go back that far on your budget, that we were much more spent than we are now. We're about half of where we were. The reason for that was the highway department was really budgeting for many of the other departments. So that's been spread out to each of the departments. So if you go back that far and look at it, but we are consistent with last year. Pretty much the same budget, maybe slightly lower. Garage power costs. We are just about the same there. In the A fund, it's about $6,000, $7,500 across the board there. There may be an opportunity for some savings there. We did just finish an LED light project, so that could reduce it, but not a lot of lights in the city garage, really. We do have some solar on the digester, waiting to see what effects that could have, but we may be able to find a savings in 2020, but nothing that we can focus on right now. Communication costs we keep very low. That's really to replace any types of radios that they use to communicate with one another. Highway vehicle maintenance, we've been rather consistent. Some of the trucks are getting a little bit older, but we have replaced a few. So there's no large change there either. In the 4090, we see a little bit of a change here. It's increased about $2,000, and the main focus of what that $2,000 is for trees, tree pruning, tree trimming, and tree removal that are done by the highway department specifically, so along the roadways and alleyways. A lot of times we can trim trees just by utilizing the equipment that we have, but if you've seen in the last month or so, we've been using the lift to clear some of the trees on the streets. We actually use some in the parks as well, but that amount is for some tree removal and pruning as well. I know the tree committee was planning to be here, but they'll be happy to hear that there's at least a placeholder in there for some work there. So that's why you see the increase there. It wasn't budgeted in the past, we've been utilizing it, so it's budgeted now. Any questions before I move down to some of the other lines? The 5112 is permanent improvements for the highway. That's basically utilized through CHIPS money, which is state money that is given to the city. It's usually about $200,000 a year. That's what we use for our paving, potholes, maintenance, things of that nature. You can also use it for striping, signage, and equipment. So it can also be used for equipment, something to keep in mind as we move forward. 5115 is the summer program. This is summer help. Most of the time it's guys help with mowing lawns and pulling weeds and keeping up things like that. Guys and gals, not just guys. So we kept that pretty much flat. That's a formula based on hourly, how many hours and how many weeks. From there we move down into the highway garage specifically. So what you'll notice there again in 2018, that was in the highway garage. That we've since moved that, so that's already been touched on in this particular one. Where we see some changes here is getting into the snow and ice control. And again, you know, I know my predecessor used to have some maps on the back, and he'd tell you what it looked like and the European model and all this stuff. I'm not a meteorologist, so I don't get into that, but some costs have gone up. Again, it is, as Amanda has pointed out, the Farmer's Almanac has said that it's going to be a rough winter. Let's just throw that thing right in the fire and burn it. We don't want to hear that. But what we have done here is the 1002 account is basically the overtime for those operations. And so we'll get into it a little bit later on, probably one of the last things we'll do tonight, but we do have a change in staffing that's going to be taking place. And so the highway department will be in charge of a little bit more of the snow removal than what another department was in charge of. So that's been increased, and again, to be prepared for a bad winter. So that's been increased to 30,000 in here, so you'll see that increase. With that, we do have a expected decrease in road salt. Supervisor Mark Cady has gone out and done some procurement work and found a cheaper supplier for the salt. And so our costs have gone down for that, just slightly. And again, you never want to budget not enough for salt. A few years back, we were well over this budgeted amount. I think we were in the 60s for how much we ended up spending on salt. So still being conservative, making sure that we have enough money in there, so that's at 38. So if we look over the 2019 A budget for the highway department and the 2020 A budget, we're looking at about a $7,000 increase in expenses from 19 to 20 as far as the budget goes. And again, 5,000 of that is for snow and ice removal overtime, and 2,000 is for trees, and that really kind of hits any changes in here. So rather status quo for the highway department, but again, we just breeze through it. If there's any questions about operations or anything like that, go ahead and shoot them at Mark, and then I'm sure Mark has some things he'd like to talk about as well.
Mark, do we use the radios?
Well, we can use them truck to truck now. That's all we use them for. We don't. We used to have a repeater, is what we call it, off the tower over in Troy. We don't have the service that anymore, but we can still use them truck to truck. So we basically use them. Do we use them constantly? No, but they do come in helpful when we're snowplowing. And I can get a hold of somebody real quick.
Do we have any city phones?
Not in the highway department.
Not in the highway.
Everybody knew my other number. That's the way they always used to call me. So I just kept it that way. Make it a lot simpler.
other questions for Mark? Hank, as though the
Hello.
phone.
What about equipment, Mark?
Equipment, yes. Okay, so, once again, my wish list would be a nice snow blower attachment to the loader.
To the left?
To the loader,
Oh,
the loader, $64,000 installed. We were trying that, the 1969 C cart we got now is basically obsolete. You know, to get parts for it would take forever to get, if it breaks down. Right now, it would take a nice chunk of money to get it up and running again. I mean, I know it needs brakes, brake lines, it needs a ton of work. That would be great, really. Another thing would be a nice skid steer, another skid steer with wheels though, with a smaller snow blower attachment. So I could use it for the bike route that's coming along, city sidewalks, a lot easier to plow. I can just go right down them with a snow blower and blow right through the grass. And that combined price, a new loader or a new skid steer with a snow blower attachment floats around 65 grand, a little less, give or take. But you can buy a used skid steer for about 32 grand. And then get a snow blower attachment for that, it's probably another 7. So, give or take.
That brings up a question. Are we, is it the intention to actually plow the bike path?
Yeah, so it's not the immediate need, but some of the bike path is actually part of the sidewalk in front of homes. So it's the city's responsibility to maintain that area as it's a bike path. So there are certain areas that would need to be done.
That means like ice, more so ice than even worried about snow.
Snow, salt, yeah, ice. So that intention would be just to get rid of everything that's there.
So with those equipment costs, there's a few options. They could be budgeted because they would be one-time purchases, so they could be budgeted for the 2020 budget. If the council felt that was useful. Also, we do have an equipment reserve that is put in place for the purchase of these types of items, not specifically for these as it was put together, and the numbers were allocated to that. But also, CHIPS does allow for equipment purchases, and their equipment for the maintenance of the roads. So I am waiting on confirmation, but these items could be purchased through CHIPS funds, which again is no hit to the taxpayers of the city of Waterville. That's state funding that comes in, and we do have a surplus of money there, a larger surplus than was originally expected because we were able to find another $100,000 grant for our paving this year. So there is money in CHIPS to also acquire that type of equipment. We can certainly cover the $65,000. I don't know that it would be enough to cover 105 or 130 with the skid steer, but both of those items were necessary. We can one from one from the other, or a share between all three. But there's definitely options when it comes to the equipment that Mark has requested for consideration. Any other questions for Mark before we move on? Thanks, Hank. We're going to move on to sanitation. We will find as you switch your sheets to sanitation, there's not as many lines there. It's much more cut and dry what sanitation's operations are. So again, we begin at the top. So the 8160 is the solid waste management program. 1001 is staffing. Again, the same amount of staffing there, a supervisor, 2 drivers, and 4 laborers. Again, a 1.5% increase across the board for each of those, as they are union employees, and union contract requires a 1.5% increase. Clothing allowance is set, and that's $700 per man, so that's covered there. Overtime costs, we kept that equal to what it was in previous years. We've been a little bit under budget there, but we have had years where we've been a little bit higher as well. Kept that the same as well. As we move into the contractual services and expenses, gas and fuel, very little change there. We did slightly decrease it. We were a little bit lower this year, which is very good. So we did decrease that ever so slightly. The refuse removal contract and truck rental, we've kept that pretty much the same. Again, some years it's lower, some years it's higher, so we have that. 4021 is the big one. That's the landfill cost, and expenses continue to go up as far as the landfill costs go. We're currently at $68 per ton, 64 right now per ton for the for refuse, and recycles fluctuates rather regularly. But Chris, what
Between 80 and 85 per ton.
So
It fluctuates every month, according to the market.
$85 a ton.
The bill, the last bill we got in, I believe Phyllis got in, was, I think about 82.75 per ton.
So obviously a significant increase from a couple of years ago where we were receiving $10 a ton in revenue from recycles. We obviously have no control over tariffs in China, so that would change a lot for us. So you obviously see a significant increase there based on those numbers. Last year we did budget for the increased cost in recyclables because of that. So there's an increase there with the continued increase in recyclables and a slight increase in refuse as well. Roll-offs we've kept the same, no change there. Vehicle maintenance, that has been increased from $25,000 to $30,000. So a main reason there, we do have 2 trucks that are old, but we did budget in there for a tipper on the back of the truck. The tippers have some great uses to them. Our new truck, we ordered with the tippers. This is the tipper on a truck that doesn't have one. And with the new cans that are out there, the tippers work great. They're really good, especially for the guys that are doing it. Can really prevent injuries. These guys are picking up cans and dumping it or reaching their hands into the garbage, and there's could be anything in there. So it's definitely a safety precaution as well to have those. So definitely worth the $5,000 to put that on there. So that's why you see an increase there. Miscellaneous trailer rentals, some phone. Again, this is kind of the other costs, miscellaneous costs, as they're in there. We did slightly reduce that over last year because over the last 2 years we haven't had to expend that money, so we've slightly reduced that as well. So in total, from the 2019 A budget to the 2020 A budget, we're looking at about roughly $25,000 increase. Again, the majority of that coming from the tipping fees, the landfill costs, and then a slight increase from the vehicle maintenance. Questions for Chris? And I'm sure he's got, Chris, he's always got a few things to say.
Want me to go first? You first.
Go ahead.
All right. The things on the wish list we look for this year, like Jeremy said, is the back tipper. The brand new truck we bought had 2 tippers on it. Truck 16 we purchased about 3-4 years ago, put a tipper on there, and we're looking to do that for truck 13. Like I said, the reason why maintenance is going up, we have 2 trucks that are over 12 years old right now. They're 2006. We run them 5 days a week. We do garbage 4 and 1 a week on that 5th day. We don't have any garage capability to put them anywhere, so they're out in the elements all year too. So one of the trucks is starting to show some significant rust. We've talked to CPJJ, so instead of replacing the truck next time, they also sell the body. When you buy a garbage truck, you're actually buying 2 parts. You're buying the truck, and then you're buying what they call a packer in the back, and they marriage them together to form a garbage truck. As funny as it seems, you think you can just go out and go buy a purchase a garbage truck. In this area, you don't do that. You actually buy 2 different items and marriage them together. Saying that, it's also helpful when something goes down, when you have a bad accident and you need to purchase a new truck, you can save the packer or vice versa. So it does help in that case. The other thing on our wish list too is we reached out, we have a backup camera system on 2 of the trucks. We are looking to get a forward camera system to alleviate some safety issues. Also, we're getting a lot, we get phone calls, believe it or not, from some residents saying, we missed their garbage, we missed their street. I always call it the big three, which is Twin Bridges, County Waste, and Waste Management. They all went to this system with their trucks, so it alleviates a lot of, people not telling the truth, whether it's our people at our end or it's the residents at that end. Keeps a lot of honest people honest. That's a big thing we're looking for next year. The big issue with landfill, just to give you a little thing, we started garbage in 2007. 2008 was our first year. Back in 2007, we budgeted $240,000 and we spent that just on tipping fees. That's not what we had to pay Waste Management to pick it up. The first year we took over, we knocked that down to like 180,000 feet. For 12 years straight, we had a great working relationship with County Waste. And we had an awesome contract of $52 a ton when people weren't even paying that. We were the only municipality in the area at one time getting paid for recyclables. Then you saw what happened in China, and boom, now they're fluctuating from 80 to 85. Just to think about things like that, sometimes, careful how I say this, sometimes doing the right thing is more costly. For instance, when we had our electronic recycling day, we're paying 28 cents a pound to get rid of TVs. I'm only paying 3 cents a pound to get rid of garbage. So you can see how a lot of people are, that's where your cost comes in, more the recycling than the garbage. You go up to that $64 rate, so it's going to definitely bring it up. Right now, I know there's some kind of numbers out there. Right now, we took in a little over 3,400 ton of garbage last year. We're about 2780 with 3 months left to go. We usually take in approximately anywhere from 280 to 300 a month. But with picking up Maplewood this year, we have capability of dumping about 100 of that ton in Colony, which we don't have to pay for. So right now, as it stands, we're about right on track on what we thought, which is hard to judge. You can sit back. I think last year we thought we were going to pick up 3,300, and we ended up picking up 3,400. Saying that comes from a lot of reasons, a lot of cleanouts. We have to look at the revenue end because we do charge $20 for people to pick up for the seniors and $10 for people to drop off. So if that revenue's up, that offsets the cost. Questions?
Is that $10 and $20 sufficient enough?
Yes. How it works is we're just trying to break it down. If I'm paying 3 cents a pound for garbage, most people don't bring a truckload, they bring a few pieces. So, you would actually have to, if you really want to get the exact number, you would have to sit a truck there one day, collect everything on that Friday, go dump it, and then it'll be your cost that way. But, you think about it, some people dump a few things. You got to dump 2,000 pounds to get to $60, and that's a lot of week. So I'd say, it's like right on. Some people go down with a few things. Some people don't have, use the max.
Chris, with recycling going from, we're getting $10 a ton to now $85 a ton, why in God's name are we not charging some of the businesses that were picking up, we originally were picking up for free because we were getting some income out of it. I mean, why aren't we considering a charge that?
We talked about that because we need to relook at the policy.
Then let's relook at it.
The policy, but I don't want to use the word policy. The system we came up with 12 years ago is, kind of outdated, and now we have to look at it because there's some businesses that are paying, that should, and the way it was looked at when we went to a few of the businesses, hey, we grab the recyclables, stay with the school, we would take those recyclables. There is a few businesses that we turned away now because we're telling, hey, the book depository down in Port Skylar used to dump off a lot.
Well, I mean, I know a couple of meetings ago we adjusted the the ambulance service rates and things like this, and it's just a normal thing. I mean, everything needs to be looked at and relooked at. But that's something that we've been looking at or been talking about for a while. But yet this rate is going up. I mean, I wasn't even thinking it was 85. I thought it was like in the high 50s.
So it started at $68, and then this last bill was 82. Then it'll be down to like 73. Every month it fluctuates. We don't have an exact number, and they won't sign into a contract
No, I don't blame him. I don't blame him, but I'm still saying is that we need to look at that because, I mean, I don't understand why this is, and then, but we're making sure we charge for that little old lady to pay for her disposal.
What was the thinking behind not having the second bulk week? As I'm looking at these numbers now, I understand the problem seems to be sitting with recyclables. It's not sitting with the solid waste itself. So I mean, it seems to be a separate issue from, and it seems like something that was budgeted for already. When you back out the other numbers, it's coming from Maplewood at 900 tons, we're at 1880. So far, we spent about 120,000 for actual garbage. I understand the recyclables are on the other end of it, but I guess.
So the cost based on how much we pick up on a bulk week
Sure.
is about $10,000 in tipping fees. So if you look at the numbers on the sheet, it was budgeted for $240,000 and we're estimating at $242 without another bulk week. So it would be another $10,000 over budget as far as the money goes.
Right.
With that.
But there is a
That's just
contingency
one.
is the other part of the budget, right? There's a $100,000 contingency somewhere else that kind of alleviates for those things, or no?
I don't think it's 100 in last year's budget, in the 19 budget, but there's a contingency in the budget for certain items.
Just looking, so when I prepared the number originally, or I suggested the number originally, I actually only budgeted for one bulk week. So there weren't two. When I was calculating it, I did the certain number of tons for garbage, a certain number of tons for recycling, plus the 10,000 for bulk week. But I only did one.
What budget was that for, Amanda?
2019 this year,
Last year's budget?
last year's budget.
The budget that we're currently in, yes.
Okay, was that discussed last year? I don't remember that topic being mentioned. You might
Honestly,
have budgeted that way, but I don't remember it being mentioned.
Our budget workshop, we talked about bulk weeks, yes.
Yeah, oh, we did talk about bulk weeks, but we never talked about only limiting to one. But that's okay.
Who's our biggest business again?
As far as,
Trash and recyclables.
what are we being charged? Are we charging them? What do you want?
The ones that generate the most.
I would say Black Bear, the Center for Disabilities on 8th Ave, they have 8 housing. We charge out. They're big clients. We don't do the school anymore. The rate was $150 for the first can, $100 for any additional cans. Some businesses only use 2 cans, some use 6, 8 cans.
We do refuse and recycling at housing?
Yes.
We do recycling.
But I think Charlie was referring to, there's a couple businesses that we picked up recycling that have a decent amount of pile out there. I couldn't tell you the weight, I don't know up around weigh it, but there's a few out there that we could charge.
Yeah, what are they? That was the question.
Lenny's, Giuseppe's, those are the bigger ones. And then there's, you got Pat's Pub downtown. I mean, you probably see the pile, so I mean, I would say the 2 largest ones would be Lenny's and Giuseppe's, off the top of my head.
Is that recycled? Is that garbage or?
Recycle. We don't do garbage with them.
You know?
No, we don't do their garbage.
Okay.
No, they have dumpsters.
And so back when we were receiving money for recyclables.
The idea was when we were receiving recyclables, we even took redoundants in because we don't no longer take redoundants in. We don't do the school either because they were really big. Same with the book depository in Port Schuyler, which is down the old St. Bridget's little school. They used to dump off a lot of books and stuff because, obviously we're getting paid for the weight. And we were the only ones with the contract that were getting paid for that. So at the time, yes,
Who takes care of theirs then?
I don't know.
Oh, so we don't?
We don't know.
No.
There's a few that we stopped, we let them know because of the price. Similar to that, you have to weigh, to get an accurate price to charge them, you have to weigh them. It was easier to tell them to cut ties with them than go on.
I mean, I think what I'm just trying to relay is I think it should be fair for everybody. That's all.
Chris? Chris, anything else for the council?
I don't think so. Look at my notes here. Pretty good. No? Good.
Chris? And our final workshop for this evening is the Recreation Department. Turn your page to that. And Recreation has multiple lines in it because there's multiple facets of the Recreation Department, so a little bit lengthier here. The 7020 is the Recreation Administration budget, and that starts off like all others do with the 1001 account, which is personnel. And so this is actually where we're going to see our first change, and this is a significant decrease in cost here. And the main purpose for that is Bob Loya has announced his retirement, and tonight is actually one of his last orders of business. We'll get into a little bit more about Bob later, but we have identified making this an administrative position, leaving the labor work to the laborers. Historically, in the past, we did have this as an administrative position. It is in the charter as one, and we do have civil service position for it. So moving someone over there, and this was one of the changes that was in the last contract negotiation with the CSEA union, is to not have a working supervisor in that department. So what we've been able to do here is reduce the supervisor's base rate, as well as by not being in the union, they do not have a clothing allowance, and they would not receive overtime because they would be a salaried employee. So that basically takes that from a $75,000 line to a $48,000 line, or roughly $50,000. So we see about a $25,000 savings in that line, specifically right off the bat in this budget. The 4,000 account here, contractual services within the administration. A lot of this is gas, phone, and some miscellaneous costs here. We've kept that relatively the same, a little slight increase just for some of those miscellaneous expenses that we've come across. So just a slight increase there. Next is the 7110, which is the park maintenance. We've actually, so as you'll see, that was on there in previous years, but we've removed that. That will follow down and move down into the 7140, which is the playground area. So in the playground and summer park attendance, gave that a shot a year or so ago. Did not have much attendance at the parks. Didn't have a lot of kids in the parks anymore. And so we've removed that specific one from the budget. Again, something that can be considered. I know historically as a kid growing up, there was a lot of kids in the parks, and we had the counselors there and doing a lot of the things. We tried to ramp that up 2 years ago, and we just didn't get a lot of kids in the park. So we took that out of this particular budget. Moving down, park and playground equipment, nothing specific for equipment purchases out of that line. So we move into the 4,000 account, and we do see a slight increase there again. This covers a lot of different things in there. It covers our power costs in the parks for the lights that we have. Covers when we have to get the crane for the docks. Park rental refunds come out of this. There are also some miscellaneous repairs. Obviously, there's lawn mowers and things of that nature that are in there. That's a bigger number in there. And so what we'll see is the addition to this in this year again is tree removal or tree trimming. So we do have a spot in the parks budget as well. So that is for removal and pruning of trees within the parks. So kind of separated out there. They could be combined together, but we prefer to separate them out. So that's really the main reason that you see some cost increases from the 2019 budget to the 2020 budget. So a little over 3,000 is an increase there. swimming pool, staffing and lifeguards. 2019 budget was $22,000. We were pretty much right on. Bob has a formula for the amount of staff, the amount of staff hours that are necessary, and usually it's pretty good there. So we've kept that the same. The contractual services, the 4,000 account, a lot of different things that fall into that. That's all the maintenance at the pool. We did have a pump that needed to be replaced this year, so you'll see that in the final estimate is for the purchase of that pump and the install of that pump. But ultimately, we've kept it relatively the same, some slight increases there in that account as well. The dome is the 7265. We do have a part-time staff that is there, pretty much works in the evenings when we have rentals for the dome to keep somebody in the dome. Does some other things as assigned as well. And then those hours get kicked up in the summer. Usually works some more hours in the summer, so we did kick that up a little bit for that. That was really replaced by some of the other summer help numbers that were in the budget in other spaces. So that particular staff this year actually also provided mowing at the vacant properties. So we didn't have to contract that out and pay somebody extra to do that. So the revenues that come in from the billing of that came in from that as well. That particular number will be talked about in the administrative budget workshop. Contractual services in there, the 4,000 account, power cost, Time Warner cable, Wi-Fi, those are the numbers in there. Just a slight percentage increase. And then supplies and repairs kept the same at about $1,000, what we usually use just for the base repairs in there. Bob can probably talk a little bit more about the dome if you'd like to a little bit later. A lot of things that could go on there. The 7310 account is what is provided to the Civic Center. That's the Civic Center's power and phone lines. And so that's the cost for the gas and electric there, as well as the phone lines. Very little change there, none really. 7550, 4,000 is the celebrations, special events, the 4,000 account there. Roughly about $15,000. We do receive some revenue that offsets some of that. We do have to pay a yearly music license. We have the Easter Bunny Breakfast, Memorial Day Parade, the city's annual Youth Day, summer concerts. We did have the party at the pool this year, and the tree lighting ceremony. The party at the pool was sponsored, so again, an offsetting revenue. And looks as though we may have some sponsorship for the tree lighting this year as well, so some good news there. So that'll be a possible reduction in that cost. So if we look at this budget, the 2019 budget was slightly over 200,000. And the 2019 budget is 186. So an overall reduction in recreation costs, which is always what we're looking for. Obviously, to keep taxes down, we're looking for ways to cut expenses. And in this particular instance, we were able to do that. With that said, any questions on recreation, or if maybe we'd like to hear Bob's thoughts before any questions?
I have a question on recreation. I want to know why that swimming pool building is lights are on every single night. You'd be saving yourself a lot of money if you put an alarm in.
Question?
The outside lights are on for safety reasons. Got a big hole out there, and in the dark, somebody actually would be able to get in. Could end up in big loss.
So are you talking about inside the building or outside?
Inside the building.
Okay.
Inside the building lights are on every night.
Take a look at that.
Yeah.
Mike, or Andy, do you know the income that we get from the dome? I remember we talked about the income.
I can get you a number, I don't have one off the top of my head, but we do
Track it.
track it.
That in the pavilion,
Yep, I can get you a number for that.
maybe for last couple of years, just to track. I mean, because there was gonna be an increase because we had somebody over there, and we were gonna provide more activities over there. Just to get an idea of what they were. Thanks.
Just a request, for the budget for the parks, it's great that it's down a little bit, but you think maybe we could consider getting the basketball courts blacktop? They're really, really bad.
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, we've blacktopped a few of them. We did
Yeah.
7th Street this year, which was just recently striped. We did a couple of other ones previously.
I wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids that use it. I know there's not a lot of kids in the parks like when we were kids, and I don't know if there's that many kids still left in the city.
We did,
That might be the only one left.
Yeah.
Red?
It is the only one left.
That is-
Your Brotherhood?
yeah, we did Brotherhood, we did Reds.
It's the only one left.
Yeah.
Right, so just Clinton.
And to add to that suggestion, in the past year, my wife and I attend a lot of the meetings, we live close by there, and there's always been a concern about the kids on the swings, the slides. If we could maybe either budget or look for somebody to make some contributions for like maybe a 3-seated bleachers by the basketball courts along Avenue A, very well lit at night. I really think a lot of times those kids sit on those swings and there's no place else for them to sit. So maybe some type of seating other than picnic tables that would have to be moved all the time for mowing and, you know, and of course always the trees, but that, we've talked about that
Sure.
enough, and I'm sure they're gonna come eventually.
Yeah, they're actually, I believe November 2nd is when the trees are planted, planted
But I
there.
think some bleachers, and it's very well lit there, so even at night, I think that would alleviate a lot of the problems with everybody complaining about the kids on the swings. And again, I'm not,
Yeah.
only because I see it all the time, there's no place else for them to sit.
I know as a kid, when we would go to Brotherhood, we always sat on the bleachers there,
Yeah,
so
right by the
that
courts.
that makes sense.
Only a couple seats.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 high, just enough to, and then that would also help contribute to activity on the basketball court. I mean, we hear that balls all day long, so kids come down and they got no place else to go, you know.
Very good.
And we spray it to get rid of the weeds out of it ourselves, and it's all cracked. So.
I think we just gotta be careful of the hours, because we've had complaints about the hours.
Oh, yeah, the
late-
point being,
late-
it's very well lit there, very well lit.
Thank you.
I was wondering why we don't have a crosswalk in front of the bus stops on Broadway here by the senior center. And they have them on 19th Street, they have them on 2nd Avenue, but they do not have them from here, all from McDonald's all the way down to the past the Arsenal. There's no crosswalk.
So in this particular spot here to go across to the bus stop?
Yes.
There's one that's going to be put in there with the bike path project, so that's coming.
How long ago, when was that?
So the bids come in on that project, I believe in 2 weeks. So once those bids come in, then we can schedule for the project to take place. But all of Broadway will
Because
be
they won't let us
restriped.
cross,
It'll
there are
be-
people with wheelchairs that even today he couldn't get across. And I just walked out in front of the car and said, to hell with it. Because it's busy.
I think when those go in, there'll also be the pedestrian safety access signs placed there as well.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's coming. Anything else for Bob? Bob, any words on the recreation department or anything that you'd like to see done?
No,
Okay.
I'd just like to say one thing though.
Absolutely, Bob.
Is how I have about 28 hours left as an employee of the city of Waterville. I'd like to thank the mayor, the council for all your support over the last, 12 years that the mayor's been here. And the administration and the citizens for all the support you have rendered me in my position. Say one more thing is that I've worked with a couple of mayors and a lot of people in my life. And this mayor listens to us. And he asks questions. And he lets us lets us get some things done that maybe in other mayors that we've been with didn't happen. So I just thank you all. I thank the council, admin, Jeremy. Actually, Jeremy was the first person who worked for me when he was a young man. He was still that big, but and now I work for him. And I've enjoyed, for the most part, I've enjoyed my tenure here, and I thank you again.
You know, as Bob stated, I was lucky enough to be one of his first employees when I was a teenager working in recreation department. Got a lot done, had a lot of fun, and he was a great supervisor. The one thing a lot of people don't know about Bob, you'll see him a lot on the weekends or late nights and in doing things. And of course, there's an overtime budget for the recreation director, but very rarely gets spent. And it would have to probably triple if we paid Bob for all the time that was in there. Now, the union representatives probably don't want to hear that, but Bob really donates a significant amount of his time. He puts a lot of time and effort in. He's never actually had a staff. He's always been a department of one, and he gets the summer help when they come in. And for those of you that are parents or work at a school, you know that sometimes dealing with the teenagers isn't always easy. And first, I'll apologize to Bob for when I was a teenager and I worked for you. I'm sure it wasn't easy. But what Bob has given to the city over those years that he has been here, and what we've received and benefited from Bob, can't be stressed enough. And we're certainly going to miss Bob. And I personally want to thank Bob on behalf of the administration for all the work that you put in. And I'm glad I only live a block away from you, so I can still see you every day, Bob. Thank you. Anything else on any of these three budgets before we move on?
What is the admin position going to do now for taking over for Bob?
Yep, so the admin position, the key things of it are inspections of the parks, weekly inspections of the parks and communication with DPW staff to make sure that things are being taken care of. If a swing is broken, if there's a dip in the grass or anything like that, getting that information to Mark so that he can send the guys out to get out there and take care of it, follow through with all of that. There is a lot of paperwork that Bob does, or that people do within administration to take care of that. That person will take care of that paperwork, including grants. They'll oversee the dome and the pool, the rentals of the dome, and getting things in there. Hopefully to open it back up and have some programs during the day is one of the things there. They're also going to be the person that coordinates all the city's events. Bob has been the person that has done that, so they will continue to do that. So they will do all the actions that Bob did, minus the labor activities, because those are to be provided by the union. So they won't be screwing in the swings or mowing the lawns, but they'll be handling it from an administrative aspect. And then some other duties assigned to take some of the pressure off the administrative staff at City Hall as well.
Thank you.
Great question. All right, so that concludes our budget workshop for tonight. Again, this is the second of the budget workshops. Slight change in our budget workshop schedule. Next week was scheduled to be the police department's budget workshop, but the police chief has a prior engagement, a family obligation, so kind of going to make a public safety night out of October 17th. Probably start a little bit early. We'll get that up on the site with the change, and have both police and fire here that night to be able to do budget workshops for both of those. But just trying to nail down times on that, so stay tuned. We're just informed of it today. So there will be no budget workshop on October 3rd, which is next week, but there will be a longer budget workshop, and we'll get that up on the website on October 17th. Plan to be back here then. So those will be two budget workshops then, and then the next week after that is the final budget workshop. That's the administrative one on the first week in November, and then the second meeting in November is the budget presentation. So thank you all for being here. And yes,
If our supervisor of Parks and Recreation is stepping down and we're hiring another supervisor, when we need laborers, because Bob is also a laborer and a working supervisor. I don't see that in the budget to have a laborer.
That is
Or
not,
did that go on into the DPW?
yep, so that was folds into the DPW, and 2 years ago, we added a laborer to the DPW staff from what we had then. And so the thought was that that would cover it. But if the, and again, if the council believes that another laborer would help out there.
No.
A lot of it's summer stuff, and, you know, summer is when we do get backed up because it's a lot of grass. So either ramp up the summer help, or we can hire another. It's a very good question. Yes, Bob does handle some labor stuff, so either puts more pressure on Hank and his guys, or we need somebody else. Thank you.
If you would like the numbers on the dome and the park pavilion. So far in 2019, we've done 3540 for the dome and 3800 for the park pavilion. 2018, it was 5500 for the dome and 3350 for the park.
So we went down in 19?
We're not through the year yet.
What's that?
We're not through the year yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, thank you, everybody. Died of the truck, under the truck, filming it. Yeah, thank you.